So first off, let's just start with when you see these car thefts, and here it's 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and the damage they're causing, what's your immediate reaction?
Alarming and unacceptable. It should not be happening to this level at all.
And it's happening pretty much daily, if not twice daily, they're crashing these cars. Why do you think that is?
Unfortunately, it's become commonplace. I just, before you got here, watched the video from Whitehall and saw what the officers did there and the restraint that they showed that they probably didn't have to show. Because if them juveniles who are acting like adults would have got away, wrecked and crashed into somebody's mother, family member, and killed them, then it's why didn't the police be aggressive enough and stop the threat? But they're being restrained because they are juveniles who are unfortunately committing adult crimes. The reason why, if you ask me, in my humble opinion, it is a failure of the system. The prosecutors are failing to prosecute appropriately, and the judges are failing to judge appropriately. And the juveniles know this. There are words on the street that they know what's going on. They know they won't be chased. They know they won't be incarcerated. So they are emboldening these kids to do what they're doing on the back of officer safety and citizen safety. And the citizens are paying the price for it, plain and simple.
And yesterday with the Whitehall situation, the kid straight up looked at the police and laughed when they got him. And then yesterday in Clinton Township as well, we know that the driver was the lone survivor, watched two of his friends die in another crash 2 weeks prior. What does this say about the blatant disregard for their lives and other people's lives?
They have none because there's no jeopardy. There's simply no consequences for bad behavior. They are juveniles committing adult crimes. You watch that video and they are laughing at the officers. They are ramming police vehicles with the guys that have the guns on their side. There is no respect for their own lives, there's no respect for the lives of the officers, and there's no respect of the citizens they would hurt. And that needs to stop. And the only way you stop that, I keep hearing this saying, you can't police your way out of it. Well, the police have done all they can. And we're still doing our job in spite of facing a political indictment, because the first time they do something wrong, or first time they do something that's ruled too aggressive, then the police officer's politically indicted because this was just a kid. No, they are not kids. They are of the cognizant thought to commit an adult crime, and at least their initial penalty should be adult-like. Immediate incarceration, immediate follow-up with whatever programs we can do that, but there has to be jeopardy for bad behavior. It's the battle of good versus evil. Every good parent knows you have to be a parent first and a friend second. And unfortunately, the criminal justice system here in Franklin County is choosing to coddle these kids and treat them as victims. They need to step up and be a parent and make them realize that there are consequences for bad behavior. But I'd like to see how many of these judges or prosecutors actually live and have services in Franklin County, because until it's their car that gets stolen, until it's their community that's being ruptured and ravaged by this crime, or somebody in their family gets hurt because they haven't laid down the penalties, that's when you'll see change. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it's gonna be.
And I mean, from what I know about the juvenile justice system, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's treated more as rehab rather than put into prison or, you know.
Correct. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, yeah, that's right, right?
There's gotta be a happy balance between the two. What we need to do here in the United States is we have to have, first, there's gotta be consequences for your behavior, and then rehabilitation. You don't start rehabilitation right off the bat. Even the most hardened criminal, at the end of the day, when they apologize or they come to Jesus, they still gotta pay for their sins before they're properly adjudicated. That's just how it is. So they can say they're sorry, they can be rehabbed appropriately, but there has to be consequences, whether that's incarceration, whether that's a program, but it's gotta be hand in hand. It just can't be one or the other. There has to be something that makes them blink and go, oh, I don't want that. No different from how we were raised with our parents. If your parents never gave you consequences, you're gonna repeat the bad behavior over and over and over again. 75% of juveniles in May 23rd of this year, there was an article published, and these are Franklin County Court statistics. 75% of juveniles released reoffend within 55 days. We have a problem. That means they do not care. Whatever they're doing, it is not working. And we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, and that definition is insanity. So the blame is squarely on the chin of the criminal justice system and the prosecutors. And really, the citizens have to ask themselves, if they want this, the police are doing all they can, they need to vote these people out. They need to put in people there who are gonna be strict on crime, reasonable. I'm not saying to lock everybody up, but there has to be a certain foundation of consequences when you commit a crime, period. We're even going back now, there was another article published on the stats for a lot of these are coming with curfew violations. So I'm a big fan of broken windows. You gotta stop the small stuff before it becomes big stuff. And in 2018, the Columbus PD had to do away with their truancy program. A lot of good work being done there, no staffing. City council here in this city doesn't have a money problem, they got a priority issue. Another thing that shows is Columbus City Schools. Since when has the narrative been that police are bad with our children? We have to be there with them and foster a positive attitude when they are adolescents. They kicked all our policemen out of the schools. Worthington, suburb, kicked them out of the schools. What does that show to the juveniles from inception at an early age? What do they now think of the police? Totally unacceptable. It's like the inmates are running the asylum, and at the expense, again, of the public safety.
You said you've worked in law enforcement for a long time. Going back, say, 20 years, was it like this then? Or, I mean, for lack of a better term, it feels like people are almost being too sensitive now.
I do believe people, I don't want to say biblical, maybe I will say biblical, it's a battle of good and evil. From inception, it's human nature to want to defy authority. And the person that doesn't preach consequences or assure consequences for bad behavior, that's usually the person that everybody wants to follow. So politics has now penetrated the law. Politics has now penetrated the policing. Absolutely not. The police knew when I was on the street, and I've been doing this for 25 years, and I learned something new every day. But if we had a kid that was out after curfew, doing something juvenile-ish, riding their bicycle, chalking the sidewalks, something like that, we handled that appropriately. We took them home. The worst thing you could do is take them home and knock on the door at 3 a.m. and present them to the parents. And we said, Mom and Dad, you take care of that. But those days are over. Parents aren't parenting, and now they're leaning on the criminal justice system to do their job, and the criminal justice system is failing them. No, this has deteriorated quickly within the past 5 years, I would say. It's always been an issue, but never to this level to where it's just unsafe. And I got this little sheet. Now when you go to the detention center, you get a sheet, you get scored. And based on your severity, that controls if you get locked up or not. And you literally have kids committing adult crimes such as stealing a car, domestic violence against their parents, being picked back up at a detention center from their parents within hours of them committing the crime against their parents. And domestic violence is supposed to be a big time crime, right? We all have heard that story, and I believe it is. But why is a child going back home within hours back to their parents? It just doesn't make sense.
And I mean, at least for a lot of these situations, like the one yesterday, also in Clinton Township, it seems like just the driver is being penalized, if they're being penalized. There were 3 other kids in that car and no charges with them. Do you believe that's the right way to go about this, or even with the involvement, should all of them be facing these penalties?
Well, what they need to look at is like the one juvenile that was already in an accident where someone was killed. They need to do that to look and see what is there. Are they complicit in this? Where they were supposed to be in school? Where were they supposed to be? At a minimum, follow up with the parents. And if there is a charge, charge them appropriately. But you can't even get a solid charge on the main bad actor, let alone just participants in the car. It's an easy out for the prosecutors. It's an easy out for the judges. Next docket, we're overwhelmed here in Franklin County. That's just unacceptable. You got to take the time it takes to make this community safe.
And is being overwhelmed an excuse?
Absolutely not. We're all overwhelmed. Take the time it takes, and actually the rate of them being locked back up would actually go down. I'd probably guarantee it. Sometimes it takes the time it takes to do it right the first time, to send a message, to discipline these kids appropriately within the law, and you probably won't see them back again if they have something to go home and talk about with their parents or go, whoa, I never want that again. And that's not happening. It's really pretty simple.
And now a lot of this car theft started with social media. They found out how to do it on social media. They were publicizing that they were doing it on social media. How come we're not necessarily going after them as soon as we find that first instance of it?
I think you don't have the staffing to do it. I mean, that is a great idea, but what that can be done is afterwards, look at them. This is where the prosecutors earn their money. This is where they need to take the time, do what the police do their due diligence, make the case, look and see what this child has been doing. And then put that in their probation. No social media. There's all types of terms and conditions they can do to modify their behavior, and it's not being done. That's very good. The writing's right there. They're seeing it. This has become a joke, a TikTok challenge on steal a car and run the police. Shame on our elected officials that allow that to happen. Because I guarantee you, I know, I got it when I was on the street, to where the citizens are giving our officers a handful in all of Franklin County, going, why is this kid back? This kid just stole a car. This kid just stole my car the night before. This kid just assaulted the neighbor the night before. Again, these judges and prosecutors, they probably don't live here. They probably are blind eye. They're like prosecuting from a desk, or really judging from a bench. They need to get out there and see really what's going on. And again, I reiterate this, if the citizens want this, then continue to vote for it. That is where you will get real change. Everybody has to come together, but if there's one weak link in that process, then it's not gonna work. And right now, again, the blame is squarely on the chin of the prosecutors and the judges allowing this to happen. We had Judge Brown, within the past year, Judge Kim Brown said that this was juvenile propaganda to the chief of Whitehall. There was a lieutenant there from Hilliard. Very rarely do you see the chiefs of police get on TV and come out and speak up at that level, because it's a political position in most places. But they did, and she accused our profession of being racist, and she accused us of making this stuff up. This stuff is real. If I was a citizen, everyone in Franklin County, I'd be sending her a letter and demanding that she resign, and demanding to find out when her term ends and vote for someone else that's gonna take crime seriously. That's the truth. I mean, who says stuff like that? It is not propaganda. It's right there, and really she needs to be called on it. There's been articles, but the final way you call her on it is vote that out of office.
And you said it yourself, in the end, it's the community who's suffering.
Yes.
I mean, I personally, I have a Hyundai. I'm scared every single day when I go to the grocery store or whatever that my car's not gonna be there when I come back. So this needs to change in order. Columbus is a great place.
It is.
And stuff like this is making it a not so great place for people, right?
Yeah, totally unacceptable. Columbus is not the city it was when I joined this department in 1998. We've always had our share of crime, but the political climate here is do what you want at the cost of others with no consequences. Police are bad. That's what it is. And we just showed, not to go off topic, but we just showed that 3 officers were acquitted or charges dismissed. That was a false narrative. We are not the boogeyman. We welcome accountability. We embrace it. But to deflect upon us for the own failures of the mayor, city council, Gary Tyak, Zach Klein, judges like Kim Brown, that's just a deflect. Do your job. You are a prosecutor. Do your job and we'll do ours. But nobody should have, I've heard people say we should sue Hyundai. No, we shouldn't sue Hyundai. Let's go to the root of the problem and prosecute the people appropriately that are causing the crimes.
And again, I mean, nobody wants to ram a car into a 14-year-old or hold a gun to a 14-year-old. That's not what people want. But I don't want to say they're asking for it,
Yeah.
but
What we saw in Whitehall, I mean, I encourage you to use that clip, and I encourage the public to reach out, Google it. And the violence, if you really sit back and see in totality, TV and things like that have us desensitized to violence. It's just human nature. But you look at that and you see there's 3 officers with their guns drawn. Back when I was a kid, I would have sold myself and I would have been at the mercy of that officer down on the ground, rightly so. So what way do you stop a vehicle with another vehicle? They threatened force, which they could have used. They didn't use it. The officers could have been run over. The officers could have been struck. Not one shot was fired. But that car was able to be pinned in. And I guarantee you those Whitehall officers are going to fall under scrutiny and there's going to be complaints. So hopefully that the chain of command there supports their officers for doing what they needed to do, because they used the least minimum of force. And did that mean that they had to take a cruiser and ram it back? And we're only talking within 2 feet, but to box that car in, absolutely. Because we've seen instances where officers are hesitating now because they're afraid, and rightly so. No one wants to end up on TV being sued or criminally indicted, to where they had an opportunity to stop that threat. If they didn't, and like I said, and the car takes off, then it already fled from Grove City. And I don't know the particulars there. I'm sure they did all they can within their policy to stop it. But what happens when that car goes out in the middle of the intersection and smacks somebody's son or daughter? Then what? Then it's on the police again. So we can't win because we're being felled by people above us. So nobody should have to live in that type of fear. Crime's always going to be there, but there's certain things that we can do and stop, and the criminal justice system just isn't doing it anymore, and that's unacceptable. Not here nationally, but especially here in Columbus. That's what we need to look at. The community needs to come together. We should be partnering with the police, and the community, I do believe, wants us there. I do believe that they don't want this, but you have the politicians spreading another narrative that the police are bad. And who watches TV the most? Kids. And they see this stuff. So they're being ingrained not to follow the rules and not to like the police. And if that doesn't stop, it's going to be even more of a vicious cycle the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road.
And ultimately, I feel like that fear is taking away from our protection, in if that makes sense, you know?
Absolutely. The fear is taking away from our protections because the officers, there's two prongs. Number one, you have criminals on the juvenile side and the adult side emboldened to continue to do wrong with no consequences. They see that every day. And then the second side of it is causing officers to hesitate. Again, we know that we can be held accountable, but these political indictments, like the 3 you just saw that went nowhere, those do cause officers to hesitate, and rightly so. I mean, they're still going to do what they need to do when it comes down to it, but it does. It's one less car that's being pulled over. That's one less time where they should have took charge quicker, which puts themselves in a dangerous position, which puts the citizens in a dangerous position. We just saw within the last 6 months that traffic stops declined by the thousands. And the director's office, what's this about? What do you think? Open up your eyes. It's not rocket science. You have created this culture of taking citizen safety and officer safety into a realm of politics to where it's affected both sides negatively. We wouldn't want them to do that to their job. Why are they doing it to ours? Again, it's just a recipe for disaster. And it really falls now on the citizens to speak up. They have to.
Right, and working with the FOP, I'm sure you talk with other law enforcement agencies around Ohio or other places in general. Are they dealing with these similar issues? Or, I mean, I know you said primarily, like right now, we need to focus on Columbus. That's our goal. But are other people dealing with this too?
It seems to be politically charged, to be quite honest with you. I hate it, but that's the sad world we live in. So in Franklin County, FOP Lodge 9 has 3,500 active members. So when I say FOP, I say Columbus, that's Franklin County Sheriff's Office, that's Whitehall, that's Grove City, that's Hilliard. Every jurisdiction within Franklin County we have. So we are struggling with that. And what is the common denominator? The Franklin County criminal justice system. But this is a national trend. Typically in your blue to left-leaning cities, that they do not want to hold, they pick and choose who they hold responsible for what crimes and to what extent. You know the old saying, don't do this in Texas? Well, they're not having these problems in other states like that. I mean, they have the normal problems, but here it's just a flat out, we're not prosecuting for certain felonies now. We are a plea bargain city, and that's really not a fair depiction of, I don't want to paint these prosecutors with a broad brush like they do us. I'm sure there are prosecutors, I'm sure there are judges that want to do the right things, but the system is bigger than their desires. So that's why here we have to keep fighting and keep putting the message out to really, I believe this falls on the citizens now to vote appropriately. Because there are fine candidates that we will hold accountable, that we endorse, not for our good, but for the good of the community. Because we want people that are going to go out there and treat people fairly, that's what the cops do, and we want prosecutors to do the same and judges to do the same, but hold people accountable for what they do. Since when has that become a bad thing? To have consequences for bad behavior. I do not get it. It's complete insanity because it keeps happening over and over and over again. And like the old John Fogerty, I'm a senator's son, until the right person, I know that sounds horrible, is a victim of one of these crimes, you will not see change. And I implore upon the public to not let these people play us. We are one, we are together. They are giving the narrative that we're all divided and that the police are bad and the communities only want certain types of policing. That's wrong. I guarantee you, I know in my heart that 99% of the American public wants law and order. We couldn't sit down here together if we don't have law and order. That's a fundamental fabric of society. That's all our people asking for. A fair shake, to be heard and to be judged appropriately, and that's just not